Before we begin, I'd like to mention that this is a part 2 to my last video, so I would recommend watching that first. But if you can't be bothered, in that video I cover some of Renault's quirky attempts to crack the luxury market. From concepts to the production cars they spawned, namely the Velsatis and the Aventime, neither of them were particularly successful. They were typically weird and French, meaning that they were never likely to be massive hits in the first place. But in true French fashion, there was also some friendly fire involved with these funky flagship cars. That's a lot of Fs. You see, both the Velsatis and the Aventime were essentially gunning for the same spot in the Renault range, but in the company's infinite wisdom, they were launched at pretty much exactly the same time, meaning they tripped over each other and caused a great deal of confusion for the buying public. And adding to that smorgasbord of awkwardness, there was another car that I didn't discuss. It was in fact the car that video was supposed to be about, but my research took me down such a sprawling wormhole that it got cut out entirely. Anyway, I promise I'll get on with it now. Today's subject is Project Z12, the concept that will become known as the Renault Talisman. As we know, Renault started going concept car mad in the mid to late 90s, partly thanks to chief designer Patrick Lecommon. Renault were in a transitionary phase to becoming a more style-led, luxurious brand, but just before pen was put to paper to start designing its Talisman, another very significant chapter in Renault's history began. Their alliance with Nissan, who were really struggling at the time, and Renault would purchase a 37% stake in the Japanese manufacturer. The Talisman would be the first car designed since the formation of that alliance in 1999, and already it had borne fruit, as the Talisman would use a Nissan engine. And not just any engine, it was an M&S engine, otherwise known as the 4.5 litre V8 from Nissan's flagship limousine, the President. Renault had never, and still haven't, had a V8 in one of their production cars before, so this was a big deal. Sure, it wasn't hugely powerful, kicking out around 270 horsepower, in accordance with the Japanese gentleman's agreement, but that wasn't the point. This was another of Renault's attempts at a luxury halo car. As we know, the company was firing out concepts at a rapid rate, and work on the Talisman began almost immediately after the Aventime was revealed. Despite this though, each one of these concepts needed a purpose, a raison d'etre. Although don't ask me what the point of the raccoon was. In the case of the Talisman though, the focus was to be on the interior of the vehicle. Makes sense for a luxury car, but that's not to say the exterior wasn't striking in and of itself. It was long, low and wide, and looked pretty imposing. But for a moment, I want to discuss the car's name, Talisman. Consulting the Oxford English Dictionary, the definition reads as follows: an object, typically an inscribed ring or stone, that is thought to have magic powers and to bring good luck. That last part, unfortunately, did not come true, as mere hours after the press and visiting public got their first look at the Talisman during the Frankfurt Motor Show, the world would be changed forever. Although that had nothing to do with the car, it just happened to be revealed early in the morning of September the 11th, 2001. I can't put a joke here, can I? All I'll say is that it's an unfortunate time to reveal a car that's name is just 2 short letters away from Taliban. I sincerely hope no one had a cold that day. Moving on, I'd like to cast our minds back to the concept of Velsatis. That car was also quite similar in being a luxury coupe, and was actually bigger than the Talisman, being marginally longer and a decent chunk taller. It also boasted the biggest doors ever fitted to a car. Until the Talisman came along. Its gullwing doors measured almost 2.5 meters in length. To put that in context, that's longer than the entire wheelbase of a new Volkswagen Golf. It seems that with this car, the Velsatis concept, and of course the Aventime, Renault had a bit of a thing for enormous openings. Nah, who am I to judge? Anyway, Those doors were of course the means to access the car's apparent pièce de résistance, the interior. Incidentally, both the interior and exterior were designed by the same person, Stéphane Genin, which was a first for Renault. Right, now comes the difficult part, as I have to decode all the corporate guff and package it back up in a way that a normal person like you or me would actually understand. Their aim seemed reasonable enough, to simplify the interfaces within the car and make it a more intuitive experience. They were rallying against the ever-increasing complexity of modern car interiors, and that's no bad thing. But of course, Renault couldn't just say that, could they? They coined sickening phrases like simplexity and touch design. Allow me for a moment to quote the company's president at the time, Louis Schweitzer. Touch design is about achieving a harmonious association of sensuality, tactile pleasure, and intelligence, about understanding the relationship between people and things. I find touch design attractive. Jesus, maybe it's a good thing the Talisman never made it to production, because if all that was true, it would be doomed to a life of being a fake taxi. I don't think the red leather helps with those aspersions either, but it must be said that it does actually look pretty cool, with its almost floating carbon fibre seats and dials in the steering wheel? Sure. Speaking of, those seats were fixed in place, while the pedals and instrument panel would adjust electronically. All very retro-futuristic, or just futuristic as it would have been when the car was revealed almost a quarter of a century ago now. However, it was a good move, as cars like the new BMW Mini and the 5th generation Ford Mustang would go on to use that approach to great success. How much it actually influenced Renault's future interior design is questionable at best, but like the Initiale I discussed in the last video, the exterior would receive compliments from another brand's design team. This time, the manufacturer in question is BMW. This happened after the car's reveal at Frankfurt in the aftermath of the attack on the World Trade Center. To then find out that Chris Bangle of all people really likes what you're doing is just adding insult to injury, surely. Okay, maybe that's a bit unfair, but
Got to hear and lost the will to live. Look.
Thanks for watching.